Hello, all. I've been trying for a couple of days to do a review of one of my other favorite Twilight Zone episodes, which I know is not everybody's, but that's Uncle Simon from the fifth season of the Twilight Zone. I realized in order to do this, I need to put the fifth season into perspective. As people who are fans of the Twilight Zone like me know that the fourth season they tried an experiment. They expanded the format from half an hour to an hour. While they gave us some really terrific episodes like On Thursday We Leave for Home with James Whitmore and In His Image and uh, Miniature with Robert Duvall, which was a really great episode, and a number of others that a lot of them were kind of clunky. Even one that I like, The Valley of the Shadow, was a bit of a cliched story. And really padding them out to an hour didn't do anything for the suspense and shock, if you will, format of the Twilight Zone, and kind of dumbed it down a bit. So they went back to the half hour in the fifth and final season, which was from 1963 to 1964. Um, there are a handful of really good episodes out of the 36 that were produced, and I'll list off the ones that I particularly enjoyed. I liked the first one, In Praise of Pip, which is, I think, the first mention on television of the Vietnam War at all. It deals with a man who is missing his son who was killed in the Vietnam War. He begins to see his ghost. Really quite well done with Jack Klugman and young Billy Mooney. Well, teenage Billy Mooney. He wasn't young at this point, but it was really quite well done. Um, uh, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, of course, which was the third episode shot with William Shatner, is just brilliant. A man thinks he sees a gremlin out on the wing of the plane, and he can't convince anybody that it's real until finally the twist, which I won't give away for people who haven't seen it, but a very shocking twist at the end. Number four, the fourth episode, A Kind of Stopwatch, is a bit silly, but is interesting in its concept. And as this guy discovers a stopwatch that can actually physically stop time, and there are some unforeseen circumstances of that device being used basically improperly. Well written, I thought. Living Doll is the sixth episode and is one of people's favorites. It's actually not one of my favorites. I thought it was kind of boring, quite literally, and I thought the story was too exaggerated a bit. But again, it stars Telly Savalas, and he does his usual good acting job. Though he chewed the scenery a bit, but he always did that, even as Kojak. The seventh, the Old Man in the Cave, is really good with James Coburn, and he plays in. There's this community in the future, and again, I'll say this without doing too many spoilers, but they live in a post-nuclear world, and they are given advice by someone they refer to as the man in the cave, who tells them things like, if a can of vegetables is actually radioactive or if it's safe for them to eat. And then an army officer played by James Coburn comes in and says, no, you're not going to do this anymore. Forget the old man in the cave. You're going to do things my way, and all this food is safe and all of it's fine. And well, it turns out there's a twist. And again, I'm not going to give that away, including who the old man in the cave really is. Then we come to my favorite here, Uncle Simon, which is the eighth episode, starring the brilliant Cedric Hardwicke. He was not Sir Cedric Hardwicke at the time. He had not yet been knighted, but he would be shortly. And then Constance Ford, who is best known for doing soap operas, and Ian Wolfe, who most people would know as Mr. Atos from the Star Trek episode All Our Yesterdays, and Robby the Robot, of all people, who was restyled from Forbidden Planet to look a bit different in that episode. No, I'm gonna go into that more when I get into the episode review shortly. Number 9, Probe 7 Over and Out is decent. Story is cliched, but it was still done pretty well with Richard Basehart and Antoinette Bauer, who was very beautiful. It's a fairly interesting story even if at the end you say, oh, really? You'll know what that is when you've watched it. 90 Years Without Slumbering with Ed Wynn. It was really good, mostly for Ed Wynn's performance. It's pretty much a one-man show, and he does a really, really good. Did this shortly before he passed away. The Long Morrow with my brain is fudge. Marriott Hartley, and it's really a very excellent episode. Very well written, very good science fiction. Number 12 Looks Just Like You, which starred, amongst other people, the very beautiful Susie Parker, one of the first real supermodels at least in New York. Beautiful redhead, very tall. And my dad actually met her and said she was always late, but she was really nice. She knew everybody's name, even like the lighting guys and the art guys, and brought donuts, and just sweet as pie. And if you wanted to depict somebody as looking beautiful, that's in the future. Her and Pam Austin were definitely who you'd pick. 12 Queen of the Nile is a really great episode with Ann Sheridan, and she plays a really seductive, evil, but very seductive character. The Masks is a classic, and I'm not even going to bother to try to describe that. It's really excellent. You just have to see it. One of the top 5 episodes. I Am the Night, Color Me Black is a very good episode that deals with prejudice and hatred and the misuse of the injustice of the death penalty, even in old times. But it's a metaphor of this for the modern time. The Jeopardy Room is a really excellent episode with Martin Landau, which formed the basis of what would later become Mission Impossible. And even Bruce Geller said that episode was what he based Mission Impossible on. A really great Cold War thriller episode. Stopover in a Quiet Town it's an interesting idea if, again, it's a bit cliche. A lot of the things that were done on the Twilight Zone, even at this time, 1959 through 64, were quote-unquote old saws in science fiction. They've been done a billion times, We go to a different planet and they put humans in a zoo. How many times has that been done in science fiction? Quite a lot since the 30s. Stories of that sort, everybody went, ooh, like they're brand new, but they really weren't. But anyway, that's my overview of the episodes that I enjoy most of season 5. There are a couple more that I liked. Ring-a-Ding Girl is not terribly bad, but again, I thought it was kind of corny. The Bewitching Pool I cannot stand. That is just so saccharine, it makes me want to puke. I understand it's supposed to be a kids show, but I really thought it was a terrible way to end the series. The Fear is very silly. The Encounter, the controversial one about the alleged Japanese spy at Pearl Harbor, was a good episode, but it's really not enough to make my list of the top episodes of season 5. Anyway, let's get back to the 8th episode, Uncle Simon. Uncle Simon, as I said, starred Sir Cedric Hardwicke and Constance Ford as Uncle Simon, who's an eccentric scientist, inventor, and his niece Barbara, played by Constance Ford. And it was broadcast on November 15th, 1963. It was directed by the great Don Siegel. If you don't know who Don Siegel is, think things like the 1956 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Kevin McCarthy, a little movie you might have heard of called Dirty Harry with Clint Eastwood, Two Mules for Sister Sarah, also with Clint Eastwood, a number of movies with Charles Bronson, and really a great, terrific director. And he directed this episode. It was written by Rod Serling, and an original screenplay. It starts with a scene of Cedric Hardwicke Cedric Hardwicke, I should say. He wasn't Sir at that time. As this character, Uncle Simon, and his niece Barbara is looking for him, saying, "Uncle Simon, are you upstairs? Uncle Simon, are you in the laboratory?" And he turns around. Finally, he's in his lab. Says, "Garbage head, I was right here. You don't have to shout." He says, "You know what I'd like, Barbara? I'd like you to bring me a cup of hot chocolate. I'd like it in the bone china cup. If it's not hot enough, I'll throw it on the floor." And she says something like, "Uncle, I'll get you the hot chocolate, but you could do me the favor of at least letting me know where you are most of the time." She says, "Well, that's quite easy to explain, my wilting turnip." Says, if I'm upstairs, either upstairs in my room, or I'm not upstairs, then I'm downstairs in my lab in the library, or if I'm not upstairs in the library or upstairs in my room, then I'm downstairs in my laboratory. And either way, you can find me and bring me the hot chocolate. So if it turns out I've died, and if I'm not, then I've dropped dead en route. You can bring me a bottle of formaldehyde and a rose. And she responds, why, Uncle, you're a great comedian. You should have been in vaudeville, mockingly. And he says, well, I dare say I'd have done better there than you. Ever dance, Barbara? Ever dance a fast, cut loose and dance a fast Charleston? No, most unlikely, most unlikely. Barbara, you're the only woman I know who looks as if underneath her clothes she wore clothes. You have all the grace and femininity of a high-button shoe. I just thought that was hilarious. And then she storms out of the room. She's too insulted. And now Rod Serling makes his opening, which I know from memory, just because I love this so much. And I'll do it in my Rod Serling voice, not out of mockery, but out of respect, because I really respected Rod Serling as a writer. I thought he was terrific. It's very sad that I never got to meet him because he passed away during open heart surgery. Probably from the fact that he smoked 5 packs of cigarettes a day for like 20 years. But the narration is as follows. Dramatis personae, Mr. Simon Polk, a man who has lived his life in a gleeful rage, and the young lady who has just beat the hasty retreat is Mr. Polk's niece Barbara. She has lived her life as if in each ensuing hour she had a dentist appointment. There is a third member of our party as yet unseen. He currently resides in the laboratory, and he is the kind who is only found in the Twilight Zone. Uncle Simon constantly berates his niece Barbara, who is his caretaker and has been his caretaker for 25 years. At one point he says, tell me something, Barbara. Why do you stay here? She says, I had the feeling I was needed, Uncle. And he says, oh, indeed you are. That explains why I keep you here. It doesn't begin to explain why you stay. Any person with half a brain or an ounce of gristle would have murdered me years ago. She says, unasked, I'll tell you why you stay. It's greed so pure and thorough that it burned out even all the hatred in your heart. Well, one day you will be the owner of this decaying barn. But until that day, keep your long, spindle-shank carcass out of my laboratory and your long, thin, probing nose out of my business. I just thought that was a great episode. It just goes on and on. Like he won't let her open the curtains because he doesn't like the light. He won't let her open the windows because he doesn't like the draft. He demands hot chocolate. And the interesting thing is you never actually see her bring him a cup of hot chocolate, nor do you actually see him drink a cup of hot chocolate. And in the entire show, he just berates her for not doing it. And I think that in itself is kind of an interesting, sort of a red herring. Some of the things he says are just hilarious. He calls her, says, what are you doing, you peanut-headed sample of nature's carelessness? He calls her a crooked seams, rubber crooked seams, as in stockings or seams were crooked. Like I say, wilting blossom, money-sick drone. It says, and in what happens is eventually they're constantly arguing. He won't let her down in the basement to see what he's working for in his laboratory. He's a scientist and inventor, and he won't let her see his invention. Eventually, she insists on seeing it, comes down to the laboratory, and he's insulting her, calling, you ugly harpy, I'll break every bone in your body. She grabs his cane away from him, and he falls down the stairs and breaks his back, and she refuses to help him, and he apparently dies as a result. The next thing you see, there's a scene which is often cut, but I really, enjoyed it, and I don't know why it's cut so often. She goes up and she starts, throwing open the drapes and opening the windows. She smashes all his bone china, cups in his room. Says, "World, hey world!" Shouts out the window, "I'm back! I'm really back!" She's wearing, better looking. She was dressed very frumpily in the first few seasons. She dresses, in a kind of a sexy dress, and she's actually going to go out on a date. And eventually, she has to go to the will reading, and his lawyer was Mr. Schwimmer, who was played by Ian Wolfe. And he's reading the will, and he says, "Well, your uncle added a codicil about 6 months ago." And she says, "Well, what is it?" And he says, "Well, it says that you have to, you must take care of his invention, and he just refers to it as it. He says, you don't have any idea what it is? She says, no, he never let me in the basement. She said, well, he gave me the key and we can go see it. And they go down to the basement and open the cabinet where this invention of his is. And it turns out it's a mechanical man, which is Robby the robot, with its head redone. So then it barely looks a little bit more human. It looks a little bit like Uncle Simon, but, robotic looking. And at first, the will also states that Mr. Trimmer has to come look after it for once a week, every week, or else she forfeits the will, which is very sizable, apparently. She gets everything. The house, she can't touch anything in the house either. She has to leave it as it is. And she agrees. And at first, the robot is very mechanical. It says, how do you do? I am a mechanical man built by your late Uncle Simon Polk. And she's taken aback, but, agrees that she's going to look after it. And then as she's doing this, again, it's very sort of infantile. She goes out on a date. She says, oh, no, you cannot go out. Isn't Mr. Schwimmer coming? She says, yes, Mr. Schwimmer is coming. She calls him Frankenstein. Says, but, you can take care of it. And she goes out on a date. And then she comes back, and now the robot is working on some invention that it won't let her see. It says, oh, no, you must not go to the laboratory. It is my room. You are not allowed, Barbara. And, she relents and doesn't really seem to care very much about it until slowly and surely it starts taking on more and more of her late uncle's attributes, including that it asks her to close the drapes because it doesn't like the light, and to shut the windows because it doesn't like the draft. And then you see suddenly it says, wait, this is interesting. It's coming through now. She says, what's coming through? He says, a craving, a new craving. I would like a cup of hot chocolate. I would like it in the English bone china cup. And if it isn't hot, I'll throw it on the floor. And she is just now completely taken aback. And as she's wondering what to do, he says, it slowly starts taking on. Now it's taken on Uncle Simon's voice. Says, well, what are you standing there for, you lint-headed clod? He says, go get me my hot chocolate. And now, she realizes that she's made a terrible mistake in, allowing this to happen. But there's nothing she can do. She's trapped. One of the funniest lines in this is later on, now that the robot has basically become Uncle Simon, as it was programmed to do by Uncle Simon, it says, Barbara, my dear, if you could prevail upon that Raggedy Ann carcass of yours to exert itself, I'd like some hot chocolate. I'd like it in the English bone china cup. If it's not hot enough, I'll throw it on the floor. And she's just standing there. He says, well, what does it take to get you to move, you bovine crab, you torpid lotus eater? And I just broke up when I read it. Even as a kid, I knew what those words mean. Torpid means lazy. A lotus eater is somebody who, contemplates their own navel and not paying attention to things. I thought that was just hilariously funny. And then, Mr. Schwimmer has to come and inspect him every week. She pushes him down the stairs. She tries to destroy the robot by doing the same thing she did on Uncle Simon. She pushes it down the stairs, but all it does is it makes one of its legs lame, and now it has to walk around with a crutch, basically. And one of the final things is Mr. Schwimmer says, doesn't seem to talk very much ever since the accident. She says, he makes his needs known, believe me. And says, well, very good. I'll see you next week. And he leaves. And Uncle Simon says, I'd like a cup of hot chocolate. And she says, I'll get it for you. She says, I'll get it for you what? She says, I'll get it for you, Uncle. And then Serling does his closing narration, which again, I know by heart. He says, tremendous personae, a metal man, who shall go by the name of Simon, whose life as well as his body have been stamped out for him. And the woman who tends to him, the Lady Barbara, who has belatedly found that all bad things don't come to an end, and then once one has made one's bed, it is necessary that one sleep in it. Tonight's uncomfortable little exercise in avarice and automatons from the Twilight Zone. In his review in the Twilight Zone Companion, Mark Scott Zickery, who I like and admire, I think he's a really good writer, and I love his series Space Command, and I hope he does more episodes, said that it's not a great episode because neither of the characters are likable. Well, Mark, that's the whole point. That's why he says uncomfortable exercise in Avarice on Automatons. It's meant to make us uncomfortable, to make our skin crawl. And it brings up some good, interesting ideas of, what would happen if we could evolve a robot that could take on human attributes. I don't know how it drank hot chocolate and didn't short out its circuits, but you have to remember in Forbidden Planet, the chef gave it a bottle of whiskey and it drank the whiskey to analyze it. So apparently this particular robot has the capability of drinking liquid, which is rather advanced. Again, it's silly, it's funny. I just thought Sir Cedric Hardwicke was so over the top as Uncle Simon that this makes it one of my favorite episodes. So again, if you haven't seen it, you should, and it's really quite enjoyable.